Hi, and welcome to the Overtime Leader podcast. If you're new, I'm Jillian Davis, and I'm the founder of Overtime Leader, and I'm going to be your host throughout this podcast series. Overtime Leader was formed because I believed, although the principles of leadership don't necessarily change, the practices must. And in a world where we have ongoing technology changes, fast-paced environments, high growth, transformations across any business, it's really time that we rethink how we apply leadership principles in today's world. I've worked with leaders spanning beauty, robotics, consumer, B2B. I've seen it all. And what I hope this podcast aims to do is that it just kind of reduces the sense of loneliness that we might have when we're navigating the uncertainty and the unknowns that come with running a business in the 21st century. I'll be interviewing some clients, some experts, maybe some friends, to talk through their experiences of what they've learned either working with me or on their own journeys. This podcast is really helpful if you're leading a transformation, if you're leading a team, or if you're looking to be a little bit more bolder and braver in your leadership. In today's episode, we're going to be sitting down with Katie Lee, the COO of Wavemaker, one of the most interesting and exciting media agencies out there. We've been working with Wavemaker for the past 12 months, helping them understand and navigate how they move from a hierarchical organization to more of a matrix organization that enables specialists and practices to all have a seat at the table. It's not been a straightforward project. No organizational transformation is. And Katie and I kind of relay what we learned in the process and specifically what she's taken forward as she's led the teams to lead the teams to more success. I hope you get a lot out of this episode. It was really great to sit down with Katie and reflect on the work together and also to capture the learnings that she's had, how to navigate change process, how to bring people with you, and most importantly, how you stay true to yourself in that process and keep your resilience up. The launch of this podcast matches up really nicely with the launch of our first online course, where I have captured about 10 years of experience working with companies like Spotify, WeTransfer, Typeform, and many, many others, and pulled them together into basically 90 minutes of very engaging content. I cover everything from how to find your leadership style to how to lead change, how do you hire a great team, how do you drive performance, and most importantly, as a leader, how do you create the dynamics that get the most out of your team? It's super comprehensive. There's workbooks, there's practical exercises, it's bite-sized content so you can kind of learn on the go and do it module by module. It's totally up to you. It's free for the time being, as I'm really keen to just get people to give it a try. I want to hear your feedback, but most importantly, I'm just excited to get it out there because I've seen how transformational this program has been when we've run it in-house. So enjoy, but most importantly, I hope you get a lot out of this podcast and let me know what you think in comments. Hi, Katie. Welcome to the Overtime Leader podcast.
Thanks, Jillian. I'm very excited to be here.
Me too. We have lots to talk about, but for starters, why don't we give folks context as to who you are and where you've come from? Tell me your journey to becoming Wavemaker COO.
So it's what I call a squiggly journey. So I started my career in advertising and spent 20 odd years in various advertising agencies, doing new business roles, doing leadership roles, going from very big network agencies to tiny content startups to social agencies. And then I made the leap into media after having been the CEO of an ad agency and joined media as chief growth officer, which is a much easier start in a media agency because I understood new business, and new business really is pretty similar wherever you go. And then I got promoted to chief operating officer after 6 months because the CEO left, which meant the COO got the CEO job and I became the COO. So early in my career in media.
Got it. But I'm sure lots you can take from.
Lots that I could take from different ways of doing things and running various size companies.
And let's talk a little bit about, the COO role, because I think it's different for different folks. What are some of the challenges that you feel you're facing right now that you think other COOs are facing in the moment?
I think the COO role is now quite similar to the MD role in that not, and I don't mean similar, but similar in the fact that they can be so different from what one MD does to another. And I remember when I was MD many years ago, just talking to other MDs and going, but what do you do? Because there just wasn't a clear job spec. Now, COO, there are clear job specs, but I think it can be completely about filling in the gaps and the jigsaw around the leadership team. So my COO role is probably very differently shaped to some other COOs I know, which makes it difficult when you're looking at peer set and trying to get advice or mentoring from other COOs, because they might be doing completely different things from you. But really, very few days of mine are the same. I look after our people function, I look after our operations function, but I also spend a huge amount of time with clients, spend a huge amount of time on new business, and a lot of my time delivering the vision that our CEO delivers or puts out for us.
Yeah. And I think to that point, a lot of COO roles are shaped by the personality of the CEO.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And interestingly, Kelly, who is our CEO, when she was COO, she did a completely different COO job to the one I'm doing. And that's same role, same company, but we are poles apart in what we're doing, because both of us were doing something different for the CEO that was in place at the time.
Right.
And you know, we laugh about it. It is chief of other.
I've never heard that before.
You know,
yeah, picking up what you can and where you can.
Picking up, you just fix things. You go around your day fixing things, and what you come into work to do in the morning isn't always what you've done when you leave that afternoon. You're fixing things, and what I love about it is that there is a huge amount of long term, big projects that you're delivering over 6, 8, 12 months, and then there is a huge amount of putting out fires day to day, and I love that mix.
Yeah, and you have to love it, because I was going to ask, when you talk about the breadth of your role, my first question is, how do you manage wearing all the hats?
Often not very well. I think one of the things I struggle with is we have a real meeting culture where we are. So I will do back-to-back meetings, and I will have to go from one meeting that is big picture vision thinking to another meeting where we're talking about, people moves and people hires in a 500 strong organization. And I'm talking about 25 grand salary hires, and going into that minutiae, having gone from big to small, and just that ability to flex is tiring. You can feel pretty drained at the end of the day when you have been trying to flex those different ways of working all day.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I've noticed that, like, if I hit over 5 different context switching in a day, that's when I start to, you feel like that zombie at the end of the day. But part for the course. So we met through the work, and we worked together. We started working together
ages ago.
Yes, it's actually only a year, but it feels like I have known you for a lot longer than that. But I think that speaks to, like, the intensity of the type of work. And one of the reasons why I really wanted you on as a guest, because I know that you are not the only person and company figuring this out. And for context, it's looking at that. I remember you came to me about matrix organizations. How do we do matrix leadership really well? And I think my first question is, how did you know when it was time to phone a friend or to call in for outside expertise?
Yeah. So we had been toying with the idea of moving to a matrix organization for a while, and we had put it into practice because we knew that the future state of media and what clients were looking for required specialists front and center rather than specialists an afterthought. And we needed to really shake up how people were operating, how people were working as teams, getting people to work differently as groups of people to get to different answers. And we could make it work really well on pitches, and at times when we were in the room role modeling where it was not business as usual, so everyone knew that they needed to behave differently. But we have a leadership team that is built of a lot of those matrix individuals, the heads of. And I think we've been trying to make that meeting and that group of people work as effectively as possible through a number of different ways. And we'd realized that individually, when you spoke to every single person, everyone was behind it. Everyone was really positive about it. Everyone wanted it to work. There were niggles here and there were a few frustrations or disagreements with certain parts of it. But everyone was on the bus, but the bus was not going anywhere. And we couldn't work out, with all of this positive intent, why we couldn't get it working. And I think we realized we're not top-down leaders. We're very, very collaborative in the way that we work, that we needed to get someone external in who could get counsel from everyone, who could consult everyone, and who could help them all build the behaviors that we needed. And it didn't feel like something that could come from top to bottom. It needed to come from that group of people. And yet that group of people, because it was a matrix organization, were all equal in role and responsibility. So there wasn't really anyone there who could take that leadership role in doing it without a bit of an ulterior motive, whether they meant to or not. And that's when we started looking at external help and external consultants who might be able to move us forward.
Yeah, I think it's about putting that ability to put a mirror up in the right way. Because it's whenever I do that work, it's very rare that people aren't on the bus, and it's very rare that people aren't on the bus and clear on where they want to go. But how we get there is up for interpretation, and no one really, it's like, a planning meeting that just never stops. So it's like, that ability to put a mirror up to everyone individually, but also as a group, and go, okay, what are we doing that's actually holding the bus back? And what can we start unpicking to move it forward a little bit at a time, just a little bit?
Well, I think what's interesting as well is it's not just the mirror. I think we all had it in our heads what we needed to do, because you were just able to get it out of us through the meetings, through the structure of the program. There was some interviewing up front, but then when we got together, occasionally you'd have to tell us off when we got rowdy. But on the whole, you were merely guiding what we knew and giving us stimulus and structure to get us there.
Yeah, the containers to move things along.
To make us think and not just go in circles.
Before we go too deep into Matrix, because I love it. Like, what does Matrix mean for you, for folks that might not be at an agency? Because I don't want anyone to check out because they're like, I'm not at a media agency, this isn't relevant to me. The reason I'm interviewing you is, whether you're an agency or a product-based business, Matrix in how we're talking about is getting different specialisms, departments, areas of expertise to work cross-functionally in different groups. It's not this static, we'll always work in this team, but actually coming together in the right moments in the right way and keeping everyone along, bringing everyone along with you.
And I think most organizations can do it for special projects or for pitches or for moments of change. It's getting into that behavior of doing it all the time. And that's where we were falling over. We were good at it when we need to do it. It was getting that to be that just business as usual hat on, rather than thinking that it was for special occasions only.
I think that's really true, because I've seen so many, whether it's a merger and acquisition, and it's like there's a start and end date and a goal in mind, and we've got to get, lift this thing over the line. But actually, when it comes to day to day, we really default back into what is tried and true, which is a set team needs to meet every week and go over this kind of content. And that's what I'm struggling to blow up across a portfolio of clients. It's actually, let's blow it up and redesign it for what we need, the behaviors that we need. And that behavior change is definitely the most challenging piece, because when we go into that uncomfort zone, we resort back into what's comfortable.
But it's also hard because it takes longer. It does take longer, and we don't have more time. We don't have more people. We're not, we're creating a matrix organization, but we're not going, and we know this is going to take 10% more time, and therefore we're going to give you 10% less work. We're going, We know it's going to take 10% more time. We need to find a way to do it and make it work. And I think that's the bit that's hard, because everyone is busy. Everyone is always busy, and everyone is thinking about how they can get through their to-do list. But that's also why we put the matrix organization in, because the work that we were doing wasn't good enough, because people were getting through their to-do list rather than really stopping and thinking, are the best people in the room to answer this? Are the best specialists in to get to not just a B answer, but an A plus answer?
Yeah. I was traveling the other day, and it was right after the Olympic ceremony, opening ceremony. And I overheard someone say it was like they got, 7 different production studios that all focused on their one area, but no one was looking at it holistically. And I laughed, because I'm like, it was, individually beautiful. It was a bit clunky how it all came together. And that actually is the outcome of that, vertical focus instead of horizontal thinking.
Siloed focus. Yes. Yep. Siloed ways of working. Yeah, absolutely.
Don't be like
be like 2012.
Yeah, exactly. Harmonious collaboration. Okay. So as you've gone through this, and it didn't start when we started working together over a year ago, it started much before. So it's been quite a journey to shift from more traditional department hierarchical to matrix flatter leadership. What's been some of, your big learnings in that process, leading that process?
It's hard. It's really hard. Even people that want to do it and want to change and work like that, when you're busy, as I just said, it's really, really hard to do that. People think of power as people responsibility. So losing a group of people becomes uncomfortable for people. And I think we needed to spend more time and effort thinking about how those people were feeling and making sure that they could see where their sphere of influence was. I think people with brilliant influencing skills have done better than those who ruled by command. And I think there's also something around a group of specialists. Often leaders of specialisms are excellent at their craft, and that's why they lead that specialism, but they're not brilliant operationally. And that's not what interests them. And so suddenly when you're opening up to a matrix organization where you are horizontally led, you are putting people into roles where they are doing things that aren't just about their craft. And I think support there and thinking around individual contributors versus people managers and the work that we can do there is really important as well.
And I found that sometimes we make assumptions that the specialists or ICs understand the whole business. And what I've noticed, it actually what holds folks back from proper collaboration is just they don't have the understanding or empathy of what goes into other areas of the business. And it feels so patronizing because, you're teaching them how the business works, but uncovering opening the kimono, so to speak, to around different parts of the business that they will need to collaborate with, and taking that time up front to go, what do you need to do a good job, especially around clients, versus what do I need, and how do we find that middle?
I also think with the specialisms, because they haven't always been client facing, there's not the accountability. And I think if I were to start this process again, I would think really hard around accountability and making everyone feel accountable, because I think we got to the point where we were doing really well in how we worked, but accountability still sat with a group of people that didn't necessarily have the control, but still had the accountability. And that, I think that put them in a really uncomfortable position.
I mean, accountability is something that I know the CEOs and COOs that I'm working with are really struggling with across all layers of business. I mean, what works for you?
We're struggling with it. I'm glad to hear that it's not just us. I think I can identify a problem. I'm not sure I know the solution. I think we do too much. And so I think when you do too much, you set too many hairs running, but don't have enough time to go back to them, to see them through, to follow up. And So I think there is focus that we need to do, and really focusing there. I think we also, especially in service industries, we are so worried about letting down our clients that we will always cover and make something work. And so things don't go wrong, or sometimes things go wrong, but we try and stop things going wrong, but it then stops people learning about the accountability and the need for accountability. So I don't think we talk about failure and fail fast organizations and environments, but the fact is we don't usually let failure happen.
Yeah. And accountability is a full-time job.
Yeah.
I think when the C-suite are already, like, to your early point, back-to-back meetings, like, there's no flush in the system to do the proper accountability piece. And that doesn't mean going around chasing people with a stick, but following up, understanding the blocks, veering people back onto the path, because there's just so much going down. Yeah. But also, how do you empower accountability to go throughout the organization instead of it just resting on a few folks in leadership? You mentioned earlier about how influencing styles have done better. What does influencing look like?
So when we were siloed, there would be a number of people who would have line management for those whole silos. It's a whole silos of people within different specialisms. Moving away to a more matrix structure and matrix organization has meant that the specialisms are now leading those specialisms and those groups of people. And I think people who really enjoy the work that we do and the output, in doing that, they are getting the right people in a room together. They are talking to those people. They are getting them on the journey of whatever they're doing. And I think that influence is allowing amazing work to happen. I think people who worked well because they had their group of people that they met on a Monday or sent the email to on a Wednesday are struggling more because they're not working in that way anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's quite an invisible skill.
It is invisible. And I don't think you can do it if you don't genuinely love what you do. Like the work and fixing problems and getting to better solutions for our clients, that's infectious when you get in a room with someone who's like, right, this is where we're going to next. This is the next stage on this client's journey. And getting those people together in a room to solve client problems, it's working really, really well, but it's working for those people where the teams want to get in the room because they know they'll be looking at a knotty client challenge and doing some interesting work.
Yeah. And thinking that through, it's like the excitement of problem solving around something you're interested in.
Yeah. But again, it's time because there are lots of individual conversations that you need to have to get buy-in, get people thinking about it, get people moving with you.
Yeah. Contentious question. Do you think that's aided by being in the office together?
Yes and no. Yes, I do. I do think it is. The reason I am pausing is we are about to move office. And I think in the new office, the way we are set up, it will work brilliantly. I don't think we reconfigured the new the office we're in now to fit with Matrix working quite so well. So actually, sometimes if you're trying to fix a problem and you do quick Teams calls, it works quite well because you can just go in and out and get everyone on side and then move on. But I think, to work properly in a Matrix organization, yes, it is. You need to be in rooms together to get buy-in and to get that influence. I think actually you can do that however you need to work, but you do need to get everyone in when you're getting to that point of trying to get to the answer. And I think doing that remotely is hard. Doing it hybrid is impossible.
Yes, the worst.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think to your point, it's always about, building rapport with your peers, horizontal peers. And that can be done on Teams. And that, for me, that looks like getting to know that person outside of just brainstorming or working on a project, but getting to know their style, getting to know their interests, getting to know their work. And I always say like that is the ROI of those one-to-ones. And that can be done on Teams. It can be done in person. It doesn't matter. But that means when you get into the room, there's more psychological safety. You can go deeper, quicker. You can have conflict. You can get out of conflict better. But you have to do that work. But it's and I love what you're saying around the office design needs to match the organizational culture and behaviors that you're trying to produce. So excited to see that new office.
But I think you're right about being able to have those one-to-ones, build that psychological safety remotely or in person. Because actually I always try and leave, I always work from home on a Friday. I always try and leave some big chunks of time free. And I'll often just call people that I feel like I haven't caught up with during the week. And those are some of the best conversations because they are those unstructured, just checking in, how are things going, conversations that you haven't had a chance to have during the week.
Yeah. And I think at the end of the day, like leadership is an extremely lonely position, and create in this time of uncertainty where we've just, no one knows what they're doing, which is, where this podcast has been reborn to solve that problem. It's just nice to talk to a peer and go, this is what's going on. And as we were saying earlier, you might not have the answer, but it's nice just to get that off your chest or to play it back or to hear, yeah, me too. I'm also feeling that this week. And so I don't underestimate the power of those, unplanned one-to-ones with no agenda. We're not here to talk about anything, but like, how are you as a human as you're going through this? What advice would you then give after going through this and thinking ahead? What advice would you give to fellow COOs or CEOs as they tackle the matrix?
I think the first piece of advice, we set up what we wanted it to look like, and then got and then we got feedback, and we brought people on the journey. I think there were some concessions we made because of the pushback that we shouldn't have made, because even now there are just a few bits here and there where we were just being a little bit too elastic because it was an easier conversation to have. And in our guts, we knew that it probably wasn't right, and we're now dealing with some of those consequences. And I think we should have had the harder conversations earlier, which probably means we should probably have brought you in earlier, because I think we brought you in to make it work at the end rather than to set it up at the beginning. And I think that would have helped us just be honest with ourselves, whereas we allowed a bit of drift here and there. I think we were frustrated at the speed it moved. But I think that was our naivety rather than it not working. I think you have to give a good 6-12 months of bedding in, making it work. And I think you need to choose a couple of clients or projects to really double down on, to make them success stories. There will be bits that don't work immediately and don't work how you need them to. But I think if you've got some success stories that you can then go, well, why was this so successful? What was this? This does work. I think that's important as well.
Yeah, love that. I mean, fantastic advice, obviously biased too. But I do think showing like along that journey, when you're asking people to be different, you have to continually reinforce why it's worth it and show them, the other side. And if you can, demo that through an example, but a big piece of this, we don't have time to go into it, but storytelling and bringing people with you, internal comms, all that stuff. It's a huge thread of all of this. It's not just the process. It's about the people bringing them with you. All right. Thank you, Katie. Any final thoughts, reflections before I ask my closing piece?
No, I don't think so. I think, again, I would be interested to look at studies, and I haven't looked at them, which I probably should have spent a bit more time doing, at the pros and cons of matrix working. So I am an advocate. I'm really pleased we've done it. The work is better. Our specialists are at the forefront, which means that the diversity of thinking for our clients is, I think, far and away better than it was. I'm really pleased with where we are with it. I worry about the drain on people's time. And I don't think I would have thought about that before I had embarked on this. Obviously, if I thought really hard, I'd gone, yeah, it will take more time. But it's just not something that you're thinking about when you're putting that structure together. I think just thinking through some of those things and going, can we as an organization, can our people stretch like that to be able to achieve this? Is that a short-term thing, like a year or two where we get used to working like that? Or is that actually just what it entails? I think those are important things to consider as well.
Yeah, really good points. And recognize that it is going to be a change curve.
Yeah.
There'll be some uncomfortable moments along the way. Yeah. All right. So I know that one of your favorite questions is what's keeping you up at night. I'm going to flip that around and ask, what has helped you sleep at night as you've gone through this process or as you go through leadership? What's kept your resilience up?
I mean, I'm incredibly lucky that my CEO is now one of my absolute favorite people in the world. I say now as in because we've worked so closely together over the last couple of years and we have an incredible leadership team. So you say it's lonely, that we're not lonely. We have a really, really good group of people who work very well. We have a great mix of personalities within that. So we've got someone who always questions, always pokes at stuff. We've got the internal optimist. We've got the person who's always worried that everyone else is unhappy. Like, we've got a great mix of people. And when I look around look around the table, the virtual table, whatever it might be, I feel very lucky that I've got those people who I know feel as accountable as I do.
Yeah, no, it's always, that is true. And it's always a joy to work with you. A lot of fun with all those characters. Great characters. All right. Well, thank you so much, Katie, for your time and insight. This has been, I know, super valuable. And thank you for your time.
You're welcome. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.